They say your first million is the hardest, and they are right, because it is at this stage that human nature resists you the most. You are impatient, you are greedy, you crave shortcuts, secrets, or some intricate formula to turn pennies into a fortune. And Wall Street, being a giant casino, will sell you any illusion you are willing to buy. But here is the truth. The path to the first million does not depend on IQ. It depends on character. It is all about who you become while crawling toward this goal without blowing yourself up in the process. When I was young, I was not born rich. I started out broke. I shoveled legal paperwork and survived the Great Depression. You learn humility when you see breadlines. You also learn how many people ruin themselves chasing what they cannot afford to wait for. The intelligent investor's road to $1 million is boring, agonizingly boring. It is a path that most cannot walk because it does not flatter their ego. Step 1. Stop trying to look smart. You are not trying to outsmart the market. You are trying to outweight it. The market will test your patience, your emotions, and your ability to sit still while everyone else is doing stupid things. Step 2. Save like a maniac, not just putting away a little extra when it is convenient. No, save until it hurts, because capital is your ticket to the compound interest machine. Without it, you are just another spectator in the financial circus. When people ask me how to get rich, I tell them, spend less than you earn, invest shrewdly, avoid debt, and repeat for decades. They thought I was joking. They wanted magic. They didn't realize that boring discipline compounds faster than brilliance. Let me give you a dose of arithmetic. You save $10,000 a year for 30 years, earning a 10% annual return. That is roughly $2 million in the end. There is nothing sexy about it. Just time, consistency, and the refusal to do stupid things. But people cannot stand boredom. They will trade, speculate, chase memes, listen to pundits, and wonder why they are still broke 20 years later. What separates the winners from the losers is not intellect, but temperament. Warren and I never tried to predict markets. We just tried to stay rational when others were not. And over a lifetime, that provides a massive advantage. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 20. They want $1 million fast, and they end up losing half. I once said, the big money is not in the buying and the selling, but in the waiting. And I meant it. If you cannot sit on your hands while compound interest does its quiet work, you will forever be giving your wealth away to someone more patient. You do not need genius. You need the endurance and humility to stick to principles that work even when they look dull. Remember this. The world loves activity, but wealth loves silence. Every great fortune was built by someone who knew when to wait and when to do nothing. The first million is a test of discipline, not intellect. It is the ability to control your envy, your impulses, and your desire for thrills. So, before you start chasing stocks, ask yourself, do you want to be entertained? Or do you want to be rich? Because the road to $1 million does not reward the smart. It rewards the patient. And patience, my friend, is the rarest form of intelligence. Most people make their first mistake by trying too hard to be smart. An intelligent investor is not someone who finds brilliant ideas. It is someone who avoids stupid ones. I have said this before. It is remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. This is not modesty. It is arithmetic. You do not need to be Einstein to make $1 million. You just need to avoid idiotic behavior when everyone else is losing their minds. Look at any major financial disaster. 1929, 2008. Pick any. What you will find is not a lack of intelligence, but a lack of discipline. Brilliant people made stupid bets because greed clouded their judgment. The history of markets is a graveyard of geniuses who couldn't sit still. They all thought, "This time is different." And those 4 words have destroyed more wealth than wars. Warren and I have watched this pattern for decades. Every boom attracted the same crowd: overconfident, impatient, leveraged to the gills. They made money fast, thought they were gods, and then gave it all back when reality set in. If you want to reach $1 million and stay there, your job is not finding genius, but eliminating stupidity. Start by cutting out the obvious traps: credit card debt, margin trading, hot tips, day trading, investing out of FOMO. You don't rise through cleverness, you rise through survival. And survival in investing means saying no more often than yes. People hate this advice. It sounds too simple. They want an algorithm, not restraint. But in my experience, self-control compounds just like money. Let me tell you a story. In 1970, a friend of ours made a fortune in oil stocks. He was certain that energy prices would rise forever. He mortgaged his house to buy more. But when prices collapsed, he lost everything, including the house. He failed not because he was stupid, but because he couldn't imagine being wrong. Confidence is a silent killer in investing. The more certain you are, the closer you are to a disaster. Warren and I built Berkshire Hathaway, assuming we could be wrong. Every analysis we did started with one question: what if everything goes sideways? That is why we prefer simplicity. It is easier to survive when your bets are not fragile. Therefore, the intelligent investor builds redundancy, not bravado. He knows that avoiding ruin is more important than chasing returns, because once you are out of the game, you can no longer compound. And compound interest, my friend, is where the magic hides. So stop trying to look smart. The market does not care about your ego. It only cares whether you can survive your own stupidity. You will never be right all the time, but you can make sure you are never fatally wrong. I have seen plenty of people go broke chasing brilliance, but I have seen very few go broke being careful, rational, and a little boring. If you learn to consistently avoid stupidity, the million will take care of itself. It just takes time and patience to let common sense defeat complexity. Remember, the goal is not to be the smartest investor in the room. The goal is to be the last one standing when the music stops. If you cannot delay gratification, you will never be rich. It is not philosophy. It is math. The intelligent investor's greatest weapon is not a sharp mind, but a strong spine. He can say no to what everyone else is saying yes to, and he can wait longer than others can stay excited. Most people fail because they cannot bear the waiting. They want the reward before they have earned the right to get it. They will chase any get-rich-quick scheme that promises speed. Crypto, penny stocks, startups, real estate bubbles, you name it. They forget that compound interest does not reward excitement. It rewards endurance. Warren once said, "You cannot produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant." That is how most investors behave, trying to compress time to cheat nature. Well, nature doesn't care about your impatience, and neither does the market. I made my first significant money not because I found a shortcut, but because I stopped looking for one. You will not reach $1 million by jumping from trend to trend. You will reach it by sitting through boredom, volatility, and temptation without doing anything stupid. The world tells you to optimize every minute, to hustle, to make your money work harder. But mostly it is nonsense. Money doesn't grow because you are busy. It grows because you wait while others panic. The ability to delay gratification, postpone consumption, resist impulse, and stay the course. That is what separates the truly intelligent investor from the rest. And it has nothing to do with intellect in the traditional sense, as I have met plenty of highly educated fools. They can quote Keynes, run regression models, and build spreadsheets that will make your head spin. But when the market drops 20%, they sell. And when it rises, they buy back in, right at the peak. A child could beat those returns simply by waiting. In the 1950s, when I started out, I learned to love inaction. Not laziness, but simply deliberate restraint. I studied great businesses, bought them at fair prices, and then let time do the heavy lifting. And it is not a glamorous pursuit. It won't make the headlines, but 30 years later, it will make you rich. You cannot become wealthy by outthinking everyone. You become wealthy by outweighting them. The problem is that waiting feels like doing nothing, and doing nothing feels like failing. That is why most people sabotage themselves halfway through. They tinker, they trade, they adjust. Now they turn a solid plan into a fragile one because their ego cannot stand the silence. I once told an audience, the world is not driven by greed, it is driven by envy. And envy has the patience. It wants what others have, immediately and effortlessly. But envy is poison to compound interest, because compound interest only thrives in an environment of patience and discipline. Want to reach $1 million? Then learn to live within your means and ignore your neighbors. Forget about the new car, the luxury trips, the status games, because every unspent dollar is a soldier in your compound interest army. And every impulse you resist adds another year of life to this army's campaign. In the long run, wealth depends less on income and more on restraint. I know people earning millions who are forever broke, and I know quiet, ordinary people who became millionaires simply through saving, investing, and waiting. The difference is not luck, it is temperament. If you can learn to do nothing intelligently, if you can suppress the urge to act when it is not needed, you have already beaten 90% of investors. So if you are still wondering how to make your first $1 million, here is the unglamorous truth. You do not make it, you wait it out. If you cannot handle 5th grade math, you probably shouldn't be investing. And if you can, but refuse to follow what it tells you, then you definitely shouldn't be investing. People imagine money to be complicated because it hides their ignorance. But wealth is like gravity. It is simple if you respect the arithmetic. Let's walk through this slowly. If you save $10,000 a year for 30 years and compound it at 10%, you will end up with about $2 million. Not a fantasy, not a secret, just basic math. Now ask yourself, how many people actually do this? Almost no one. Because saving $10,000 a year means saying no to a lot of nonsense for a long time. And people hate that word more than they hate being broke. Everyone wants to be rich, but no one wants to be rational. The intelligent investor does not chase magic. He obeys arithmetic. He knows that the world runs on numbers, not emotions. When I say, avoid stupidity, it is not an insult. It is an acknowledgement that financial ruin is usually self-inflicted. People destroy their wealth, not because of inflation or interest rates, but because they do not do what the math tells them to do. They overpay and take on excess debt. They overestimate their ability to predict the future and underestimate the power of compound interest over time. In my youth, I watched people leverage themselves to the hilt during every boom, thinking they were smart. They thought borrowing at 5% to make 10% was smart finance. And then the economy sneezed, and they lost everything. If they had simply calculated the arithmetic of risk, they would have seen it coming. Warren and I built our fortune by staying allergic to complexity. We do not buy what we do not understand. We do not forecast what is unknowable, and we do not rely on miracles, because arithmetic does not lie, but optimism does. You cannot compound what does not exist, and you cannot invest well if you are paying 20% on a credit card, and you cannot reach $1 million if you spend like a millionaire before you become one. In the real world, the surest path to wealth is painfully obvious. First, spend less than you earn. Second, invest the difference. Third, let compound interest do its work. That is it. But most people would rather chase excitement than results. Saying 10% a year is too slow. Too slow compared to what? To bankruptcy? There is a reason casinos make money. They understand human math better than the people themselves, and they know that people would rather feel lucky than be disciplined. So here is my advice. Stop pretending you are special. You will not beat the arithmetic, and you will not outsmart compound interest. You will not time the market, but you can behave rationally for decades, and that is enough. If you simply compound a reasonable amount at a decent rate for a long time and never blow up, you will get rich. Not like Buffett, but rich enough to be free, which is what the first million is all about. Freedom is the ability to stop doing stupid things because you have the margin of safety to think clearly. The path to this is simple, but not easy, because it requires embracing boredom, delaying gratification, and respecting basic math when everyone else is busy ignoring it. So, if you want to know the secret to wealth, do not look for hidden formulas. Look in the mirror and ask, can I follow arithmetic better than my emotions? If the answer is yes, you are already ahead of 95% of investors. The rest are still out there looking for magic in a world governed by math. Everyone worships compound interest when they understand it, but almost no one respects it enough to let it work. They call it the eighth wonder of the world. And it is, if you can sit still long enough to witness it. But here is the catch. Compound interest doesn't just compound your money, it compounds your behavior. And if you are disciplined, it rewards you exponentially. If you act foolishly, it punishes you exponentially. It is like gravity. It doesn't care who you are. It only cares what you do. Let me tell you about what most people never grasp. The true power of compound interest doesn't show up in the first year, or even the 10th. It shows up when everyone else has already given up. That is exactly why most investors never see this miracle. They quit right before the magic begins. It is like planting a tree and digging it up every few months to see if it is growing. and then complaining that trees don't work. Compound interest requires faith in arithmetic and patience with human nature. Two things that most people never combine. Warren and I have sat on investments for decades. Sometimes nothing happened for years, and then one day the numbers would start to explode. That is compound interest finally revealing its secret. Time does what effort never could. But people are built for motion, not for stillness. They want action. They crave drama. They want to feel like they are doing something important. The intelligent investor learns to kill this instinct because compound interest is like a silent partner. It only works when you stop interfering. I have said this before. Big money is not made in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting. Any fool knows how to buy. Some even know when to sell, but almost no one knows how to just sit. You cannot hack compound interest. You can only submit to it and protect it. That means no unnecessary trading, no chasing fads, no panic during downturns, and no greed during booms. The biggest risk to compound interest is not inflation or interest rates, but you. If you interrupt the process every few years because your emotions get louder than your logic, you start the game over every time. When you touch your portfolio out of boredom or fear, you chop off the roots of your money tree before it bears fruit. I have seen brilliant people ruin 50 years of work with one bad decision, and all because they couldn't endure a few months of inaction. They forgot that time is both an enemy and an ally, depending on how you treat it. In investing, patience is more powerful than genius because genius burns out. Compounding character, your ability to stay rational, humble, and restrained, is the only compounding that truly lasts. When people ask me how long it takes to see results, I tell them that the market is designed to transfer money from the impatient to the patient, and it never stops doing so. You will see people making millions overnight and losing them a week later. They will brag during the boom and disappear during the crash. But the quiet, patient investor continues to build. Not fast, not flashily, but forever. You see, compound interest does not require brilliance. It requires endurance. And endurance comes from humility, the ability to admit that you do not need to act every day. Therefore, if you ever get bored with your investments, it is probably a good sign. It means you are finally doing things right. Let the market entertain others. You, however, will focus on letting arithmetic and time perform their quiet dance. Because compound interest is not magic, it is a mathematical practice with patience. And the longer you stay out of your own way, the richer you will become. If you want to know who destroys most investment plans, look in the mirror. It is not the Federal Reserve. It is not Wall Street, not politicians, not inflation, and not recessions. It is you. The enemy is not on the outside. It is between your ears. The average investor loses money not because of bad markets. He loses it because he cannot control his psychology when the market behaves as usual, irrationally. When people talk about risk, they imagine numbers, charts, and volatility graphs. But that is not risk. Real risk is you making emotional decisions at the worst possible time. It is your ego telling you that you are smarter than the crowd, right before the market reminds you that you are not. I learned my first lesson about ego in the 1940s, long before I met Warren. I watched a man who made a fortune in a bull market and lost it all in 6 months. He wasn't stupid. He was proud. He thought his success meant an ability to predict the future. But the market does not reward pride, it punishes it. In investing, you do not control the outcomes. You control your behavior. That is it. The rest is noise. The illusion of control is seductive. It makes people believe they can manage uncertainty. They cannot. All they can manage is their reaction when uncertainty appears. That is why I always say, if you are easily swayed by emotions, you have no business being in the market. Ego and envy are particularly destructive. Ego makes you take risks you don't need to take, and envy makes you chase returns you don't understand. Both guarantee that you will eventually hand over your money to someone calmer and more rational. I have never met a person who got rich because of envy, but I have met plenty who went broke because of it. When your neighbor buys a flashy car or brags about crypto profits, remember, he is not your competition. Your only competition is the version of you that might panic, overtrade, or try to prove something. Warren and I never envied anyone's returns. We just wanted to avoid stupidity. Music stopped. Most people cannot bear music stopped. Most people cannot bear such patience because it bruises their ego. They want to feel smart right now. They want validation, not results. They will chase short-term wins simply to flatter their pride. And every time they do so, they sabotage their long-term wealth accumulation. If you think investing is about intellect, you have missed the point. It is a matter of temperament. The ability to stay sane when everyone else is going crazy. When others panic, you are calm. When others brag, you are humble. When others act, you wait. This is a discipline that most people will never master. Remember, every investment mistake you will ever make will have one root cause: an emotional overreaction. Pride, fear, envy, greed. The four horsemen that trample rational thought. The intelligent investor understands that humility is armor. He embraces uncertainty. He welcomes boredom. He accepts not knowing. Because once you drop the illusion of control, you can finally behave rationally in a world that is not. Ego wants to win. Rationality wants to survive. And only one of them brings compound interest. Therefore, before you analyze the next stock, analyze yourself. Because if you cannot control your emotions, you will never control your results. This is not cynicism. It is reality. And the sooner you accept it, the sooner you will stop being your own worst enemy. If you want to get rich, start by asking how not to become poor. It sounds backward, but that is the point. Inversion is one of the most powerful tools I have ever learned. Instead of asking what will bring me success, ask what will lead me to failure. Then make damn sure you don't do those things. It is simple, it is unglamorous, but it works better than all the motivational garbage you will find in the world. When I watch people destroy their chances at wealth, it is usually the same endlessly repeating pattern. Too much debt, too much risk, too much ego, too little patience. You do not need genius to avoid this. You just need humility and self-control. I have spent my life trying to avoid stupidity rather than chasing brilliance, because avoiding stupidity is easier and more reliable. Everyone wants the secrets of success, but no one wants to study the obvious causes of failure. Inversion forces you to think about consequences, not fantasies. It is the opposite of what most investors do. When Warren and I looked at a business, We didn't ask how much money it could make. We asked how it could go wrong. What could kill this company? What could keep us awake at night? Because if you protect your downside, the upside will take care of itself. This mindset alone can save you from 90% of stupid financial decisions. Take, for example, a man who uses leverage on his portfolio because interest rates are low. He thinks he is being efficient. In reality, he is being suicidal, because when things go wrong, and they always do, he will find that debt compounds faster than wealth. Or the investor who chases whatever is popular on CNBC. He thinks he is informed, but in reality, he is handing his brain over to the herd, and the herd never gets rich. You win not by following fads, but by avoiding recklessness. When you invert the problem, you see it clearly for the first time. If your goal is to reach $1 million, don't ask, "How do I make $1 million?" Ask, "What mistakes will prevent me from ever getting there?" And then build your life so you never make those mistakes. That means, do not borrow money for consumption. Do not buy what you do not understand. Do not interrupt compound interest with panic or greed. And do not envy people playing stupider games than you are. But most of all, do not lie to yourself. Self-deception is the most expensive luxury in the world. If you spend your life chasing comfort, your future will be uncomfortable. If you face discomfort head-on, early savings, studying, waiting, your future will be comfortable. This is one of the oldest inversions there is. People fail not because of a lack of intellect. They fail because they refuse to look at their behavior in a harsh light. I call inversion the thinking tool of last resort because it doesn't flatter you and doesn't make you feel smart. It simply tells you the truth about what not to do. And that is usually enough. So the next time you are tempted by a new investment, ask, how can this blow up? How could this make me look like an idiot in 5 years? If the list is long, walk away. This is not pessimism, it is prudence. Most fortunes are built not on brilliance, but on the consistent avoidance of catastrophe. If you want a roadmap to wealth, write down everything that could bankrupt you, and then simply refuse to do any of it. That is inversion. That is intelligence. That is how you quietly win while the world continues to loudly lose. People hate boredom. They think it means missing out on opportunities. But in investing, boredom is often the sound of wealth being created. The world has convinced you that activity equals progress, that if you are doing nothing, you are falling behind. That is a lie. One of the most expensive lies ever sold. The stock market rewards patience, not movement. And every time you act simply to feel alive, you are feeding the brokers, not your balance sheet. Warren and I made most of our money sitting on our hands. We bought a few great businesses and then did nothing for years. People laughed, saying, "You can't just hold forever." And we replied, "Watch." And they watched. While they were busy chasing thrills, we were busy quietly compounding. The problem with modern investors is that they crave stimulation. Their phones buzz, prices flash, dopamine spikes. They mistake noise for opportunity and treat the market like a video game. But wealth does not come to the restless. It comes to the patient, the disciplined, and the boring. When you are bored with your portfolio, it is probably because it is working. When you feel the itch to trade, it is usually a signal to stop. The intelligent investor knows that doing nothing most of the time is the right move. Because inaction preserves the one thing compound interest needs: time. I have seen it time and time again. People destroy a decade of work in one impulsive moment. They trade out of boredom, panic, or envy, and then call it a strategy. Let me tell you something unglamorous but true. Getting rich is slow work. It is not exciting. It is repetitive. It is mostly waiting for arithmetic to work its quiet magic. If you want thrills, go to Vegas. If you want freedom, learn to endure boredom. The world has an attention problem. Everyone is chasing novelty. But the intelligent investor cultivates monotony. He finds comfort in predictability, slowness, and the repetition of the same rational actions. Because boredom in investing means you have eliminated drama from your finances, and that is a form of peace most people will never know. Every day, thousands of investors check prices as if they are measuring their blood pressure, thinking awareness equals control. But watching a portfolio will not make it grow. It is like staring at a tree to make it taller. I have lived long enough to see excitement and speculation bankrupt more people than poverty. The market is a machine that pumps money from the active to the patient. And the impatient always volunteer. You don't need to move fast. You need to move right. And most of the time, moving right means standing still. You will know you have matured as an investor when boredom feels like success, and silence in the market becomes comforting rather than frightening. When you realize that common sense and wealth often grow together, you will not seek thrills. You will seek endurance. Do not look for a high, look for results. The secret of the intelligent investor is not brilliance or predictions, but the quiet courage to wait when everyone else is running. Boredom is the tax you pay on compound interest, and it is the cheapest tax in the world. Everyone wants financial freedom, but almost no one wants to pay the price it demands. Freedom is not free, not in money nor in behavior. You buy it through discipline, and discipline feels like pain long before it becomes a reward. Most people want the results of discipline without the discomfort of practicing it. Wealth without restraint, growth without patience, security without sacrifice. But compound interest doesn't work that way. Nothing works that way. The intelligent investor understands that every dollar saved today is a vote for freedom tomorrow. It is not about being stingy. It is about buying back your time before someone else owns it. In my youth, I learned a simple thing. The man who spends every dollar he earns works for his past decisions. The man who saves and invests works for his future freedom. You become rich not by earning more, but by needing less. Nobody on Wall Street will sell you this truth because they profit from your hunger. In my experience, freedom has very little to do with luxury and everything to do with independence. The ability to say no to people, pressure, bad deals, and stupidity. And that ability comes from discipline, decades of discipline. I have seen plenty of high-income people chained to their lifestyle, nice suits, big houses, fancy cars, and not a minute of real autonomy. They look rich, but they are not rich. They are slaves to what they have built. Meanwhile, the quiet, frugal man who drove the same old car and never tried to impress anyone sits on freedom disguised as modesty. I respect that man more than any hedge fund manager with borrowed money and borrowed pride. You see, the market rewards those who can delay gratification, not just for a few years, but for a lifetime, because that delay is your leverage, allowing compound interest to do the heavy lifting while you remain rational and patient. Freedom has two sides, the visible one that everyone desires, and the invisible price that almost no one pays. The price is restraint when it is easy to indulge, humility when it is tempting to brag, the ability to say enough when the world screams more. When people ask me how to become financially independent, I answer, spend less than you earn, invest carefully, avoid stupidity, and repeat for 30 years. They laugh, thinking I am hiding a secret. But that is the secret. The road to the first million is paved with ordinary days lived properly. It is built on decisions so small and boring that no one notices them for decades. You won't see it happening. You will just wake up one day and realize that your habits have quietly bought you the one thing money was meant to buy: control over your own life. That is freedom. Not yachts, not watches, not applause, but simply the quiet ability to stop playing stupid games with your time. If you ever doubt whether discipline is worth it, think about the alternative: dependence. Dependence on a job you hate, on markets you don't control, on luck that never lasts forever. Discipline is expensive, but dependence is fatal. So pay the price. Be boring, be consistent, be patient. Freedom does not come from genius. It comes from the dull, daily courage to do the right thing. And when that first million comes, not as a miracle, but as a result, you will understand why so few people get there. They wanted freedom, but they simply couldn't handle the necessary discipline. Here is the truth nobody wants to hear. Wealth does not simply go to those who want it. It goes to those who deserve it. And deserve it. It is not about luck, intellect, or connections. It is about behavior, about character built one rational choice at a time. The intelligent investor's path to $1 million is not paved with brilliance. It is paved with restraint. He earns his wealth because he becomes the kind of person who can be trusted with it. That is the part people forget. They want $1 million without becoming the person capable of keeping it. Money doesn't change you. It amplifies who you already were. If you are foolish while poor, you will be a disaster when rich. If you are patient, humble, and rational with a little, you will handle wealth perfectly. I have seen many people make a fortune and lose it because they never fixed the habits that made them fragile. They thought the goal was money, but they were wrong. The goal is character. Character is what keeps you from doing stupid things when you finally have something to lose. Wealth is merely a byproduct of long-term rational behavior. It is the scoreboard of patience, discipline, and self-control. If you focus on these, the money will take care of itself. But if you chase money directly, without earning the temperament that sustains it, it will slip through your fingers faster than you can count it. People think getting rich means acquiring knowledge, but it doesn't. It means developing habits, saving, investing, waiting, repeating without drama for a lifetime. I know it sounds boring, but that exact boredom builds freedom. The first million teaches you who you are. It exposes every weakness, your envy, your pride, your need for approval. If you survive this process intact, you will never look at money the same way again. Because once you learn how slowly, quietly, and unemotionally true wealth is created, you will stop being impressed by people who act fast and loud. You will start to see through the noise and understand that the real game is not in beating others, but in mastering yourself. That is exactly what Warren and I always understood. We weren't competing with anyone. We were just trying to get a little wiser, a little more disciplined, and a little less stupid every year. That slow improvement compounded just like money, and eventually built something that luck alone could never provide: longevity. So, if you are still chasing your first million, remember, the prize is not the destination. The prize is the process, because every dollar saved, every mistake avoided, every temptation resisted, is you becoming the person with whom wealth can stay. The world will always tempt you to move fast, chase trends, and envy the noise. But if you can stay rational when others cannot, you will have an edge that no algorithm or insider will ever possess. Wealth favors the calm, and calmness is born of wisdom, not excitement. Therefore, keep your head clear, your life simple, and your expectations grounded in arithmetic rather than fantasy. In the end, it is not about how fast you make a million, but whether you become wise enough to keep it. If you can do that, you will achieve something far rarer than wealth. You will find peace of mind, the true dividend of intelligence.